Morning, January 12th, and this is the start of a public meeting for the Township of Frontenac Islands. And calling the meeting to order. Please have your cell phones turned off for the course. We begin this gathering by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands as a gathering place of the First Peoples and their ancestors who are entrusted to care for Mother Earth since time immemorial. We do so respecting both the land and the Indigenous peoples who continue to walk with us through this world. Today, the Township of Frontenac Islands is committed to working with Indigenous people in all residents through a united path of reconciliation. Are there any pecuniary interests in the general nature thereof in this council? Seeing none, the purpose of the meeting is planning report application for consent to sever 4 waterfront lots and a new private lane right-of-way easement at 369 Road 751. And these were going to have Dimitri provide us with the information on that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dimitri. I am a land use planner with the County of Frontenac. The county, of course, provides day-to-day planning services for the Township of Frontenac Islands. Before I get into my presentation, I need to read some procedural statements that I'm required to read under the Planning Act. So just bear with me for a sec. This morning, Council will be conducting one public meeting under the authority of the Planning Act. This meeting includes 5 consent applications for the severance of 4 new waterfront parcels and the creation of a new private lane at 369 Road 7051. Personal information collected as a result of this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, the Planning Act, and all other relevant legislation, and will be used to assist in making decisions on these matters. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments may be collected and may form part of the minutes that will be available to the public. Questions regarding the collections should be forwarded to the Township Clerk. Any person who wishes to receive a copy of the minutes of a public meeting, a copy of any final report, or notice of Council's decision on any application should indicate their full name, address, postal code, and other relevant contact information to the clerk prior to leaving the meeting. A person or public body does not make a moral submission at the public meeting or make written submission to the Township of Frontenac Islands before Council makes a decision on a planning application. The person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of Frontenac Islands to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to a hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Please note that only specified persons as defined by the Planning Act are permitted to appeal certain types of applications. This procedure for the public meeting will be as follows. The planner will explain the purpose of the public meeting and provide a brief overview of the application and a summary of their review and recommendation. The applicant will then be provided with an opportunity to provide any comments that they have on their application. Members of Council will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant and the planner on the file. The chair of the meeting, being the mayor, will then inquire if there are any members of the public who wish to make a oral or written submission on the proposed application. And if so, those people should announce your name, mailing address, and provide your comments before you provide your statements. Please be aware that anyone wishing to address the application, provide any comments, should direct their comments and questions to the chair, which is the mayor's point. So I'm just going to share my screen. And that will bring us to the presentation. Okay, so the property subject to these 5 consent applications is located at 369 Roads 7051, part lot 5 and part lot 6, concession 9, Township of Frontenac Islands, located on Wolf Island. The property is located just as you're coming off of the Winter Ferry. So if you're coming off the ferry and you look directly to the right, that's the property that we're going to be discussing today. There are 5 consent applications proposed on this lot. 4 new waterfront parcels that will sever off the waterfront portion of that lot. And then just to the south of it, in between where the existing house is and where those new lots are proposed to be created, The applicant's going to be putting in a new private right of way, or a private road or a shared driveway, that these four new properties are going to be fronting on and, access. The zoning of this property is rural, and the official plan designation of this property is rural and shoreline area. So I'm just gonna provide an overview of all the parcels that are proposed to be created. So application B09, so this is starting from the west going down to the east. Application B09 proposes a parcel that is 1.9 acres in area with about 153 feet of frontage on the private lane, and it's going to have about 250 meters of waterfront. The use of that parcel is currently vacant, and the anticipated use is, of course, residential. The application for B10 is going to be the same area with just a bit more road frontage at 230 feet, 204 feet of waterfront, again vacant with residential development anticipated. Application proposed by B1125 is going to be 1.8 acres in area with 249 feet of frontage on the private lane, 158 feet of waterfront. Application B12 is going to be 3.2 acres in area with 262 feet of road frontage, 158 meters of waterfront, and again, residential development anticipated. Application B1325 refers to the private right of way, or what we think of the right of way easement. And that is going to have about 20 meters of frontage on road 7051. It's going to be a width of 66 feet throughout, and it's going to, in length, be approximately 892 feet. So it's going to go all the way from road 759 up to the frontage of the first parcel proposed by application B09. The retained parcel, or the parcel that's left over from this application, is going to be 24 acres in area with about 1,700 feet of frontage on road 7051. That parcel is developed with a dwelling and several accessory structures, which are proposed to be removed as part of this application. I'll explain later why. There is no proposed change of use of these. So this is the site plan showing the proposed development envelopes, the parcel fabric, as well as the location of the new private lane. The new private lane is outlined in red, and it's kind of at the bottom of your screen. The darker areas on the rectangles that you see in front of you, those are the developable parcels. And then the white areas are the areas that are subject to various setbacks, whether they are flood setbacks or relief. So I'm going to go over some of the comments that we received from technical agencies as well as the public. The main comments that kind of frame how we approach this application came from the Federal Emergency Conservation Authority, and they of course provide us with comments related to natural hazards. What the CRC noted on this property is that the proposed lots are subject to what's called the wave uprush hazard that will be on the standard 30-meter water body setback. And so the township official plan sets the wave uprush hazard to a elevation of 76.9 meters. And the zoning bylaw essentially states you can't have any new development within that wave uprush hazard, unless it's of course, a dock or a boathouse. Now, this elevation of 76.9 meters, it goes beyond the actual 1 to 100 year floodplain elevation. So the floodplain elevation is 76.1 meters, whereas the wave uprush hazard is 76.9 meters. What's the difference between the two? The flood elevation basically says this is where the water is going to come to if we meet the 1 to 100 year flood, which we are expected to meet more frequently in the coming decades. And then the 76.9 wave uprush hazard basically states that when the conditions are right, so when you've got high water, the wind coming across Lake Ontario is of high intensity, and the shoreline leading up to the property is sloped in such a way that allows waves to push beyond the actual floodplain limit. And that's what the wave uprush hazard is. It's that 76.9 meters. It's where the waves can come up to if the conditions are right in terms of both the wind power that's coming across the lake, the volume of water in the lake, as well as the elevation or the profile of the shoreline near the lots. We also have to keep in mind that Lake Ontario has like a bathtub effect, so sometimes the water swishes from one side of the lake to the other, and that's kind of what this wave uprush hazard attempts to mitigate. So when it comes to development, a wave uprush hazard assessment is not required for development in areas that are outside of that wave uprush hazard, but within areas that are within that hazard, a wave uprush assessment is required before the development is proposed. Since the parcels that are proposed today appear to have sufficient development envelopes outside of that wave uprush hazard, the lots are still technically developable, but to ensure that development does not inadvertently take place in an area that is within that wave uprush hazard without an assessment, without proper mitigation, the Conservation Authority staff as well as county planning staff are recommending what's called a holding symbol on a portion of that property that will require any future property owners to submit a wave uprush assessment before they can undertake development in that area. So this is kind of, this is the exact same site plan that I showed earlier. The red represents the wave uprush hazard, the black represents the floodplain elevation. So the area between where the black dash line is and the edge of that red area that represents the wave uprush hazard is quite significant. And there's potential, especially on the second lot to the left, there's a potential that there's going to be development in that area. So we need to put a holding symbol on there just to make sure that we're not inadvertently putting people at risk for developing within that wave uprush hazard, but at the same time making sure that the township is not setting themselves up for liability by approving something in an area where development probably should not take place. So as far as septic approvals go, the township chief building official inspected the septic holes that were dug by the property owner. The CBO concluded that the lot can support a new septic system subject to additional granular fill, as is the case for most properties on that island. And future development is going to require, of course, building permits. We had one comment from the public. It was a call from a nearby neighbor. They didn't identify any concerns during the phone calls, mainly just seeking additional information on the proposal. So this is, we also needed to look at what's called minimum distance separation. Minimum distance separation is something that's mandated by both the province and the township policy, and it applies to creation of new residential structures or residential lots. And basically, what that policy says is that any new developable parcel must be sufficiently separated from nearby livestock facilities. This property has a livestock facility on it, or at least one that was used for livestock in the past. And that barn is located within about 100 meters or so of the proposed lots to be created. We discussed this with the applicant, and the applicant has advised us that they're planning to remove those livestock buildings because they're not in the best of shape. So they're also going to be removing any other livestock facilities that are located on that lot, which means that we actually don't need to do a minimum distance separation calculation for this. And this is something that we are going to include in the conditions of approval, meaning that they're going to have to get rid of those buildings before the new residential lots can be created. So overall, planning staff are of the opinion that this application meets the policies of the township official plan and aligns with the zoning bylaw, subject to several conditions. I'll outline some of the conditions that are not what I would call standard. So number one is that holding overlay that I was talking about that will apply to that red area I showed on the previous slide, on one of the previous slides. And specifically what this will tell people that buy this property in the future is that, and it's also going to tell our CBO this, that if you are looking at doing any type of development on there, especially if you're looking at building a house, that you need to do what's called a wave uprush hazard assessment before you could get a building permit on it. And this overlay is necessary to ensure compliance with provincial and township policies related to development on natural hazards. I think it's important to remember here that the province as well as our local policies basically state the township is not permitted to allow development to take place in areas of national. The new lots that are proposed to be created also need to be rezoned from rural to shoreline residential type 1. The reason for that is because the current rural zone only allows frontage on a public road. All 4 new lots will have frontage on a new private lane, and therefore it needs to have a different zone or a different color than that. The most appropriate one in this case is shoreline residential type 1. This shoreline residential type 1 allows both seasonal as well as full-time residential uses and doesn't allow anything like commercial resorts. The private lane that the applicant has proposed that will provide frontage for all these new lots needs to be constructed with the township's private lane standards at the owner's expense. The owner then must submit a letter from a qualified engineer that confirms that the road was constructed in accordance with or exceeding the private lane standards of the township. The other non-typical condition will require the applicant to remove the livestock buildings as discussed at pre-consultation to ensure compliance with MDS. Alternatively, of course, they can submit an MDS calculation if they want to verify that their new lots are sufficiently separated from the existing livestock facility. The standard requirement on this application includes the payment of parkland dedication fees, surveying of the lot, installing a civic address blade, naming the private lane in accordance with the appropriate bylaws that exist, and obtaining a certificate of official to finalize it. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll take them. Thank
you. There can also be questions at the council level, and that after we hear from the applicant as well, and then we'll refer you back to you at that time. Okay, so is the applicant here to speak to it?
So we have both the property owner here as well as their agent, Jason Sands. I'm not sure if Jason has any comments on this file.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's Jason Sands from the Boulevard Group. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Dixon as it relates to these consent applications. I just want to first thank staff at both the township and the county levels for the processing of the applications and getting these in front of you at today's meeting. Secondly, I'd like to make a comment as it relates to the wave uprush study and the township/county's desire to instill a holding symbol. The reason that we were unable to complete, or we chose not to complete, a wave uprush study at this time, as we're unsure as to where future development may occur on each of the severed properties. So we felt it was most appropriate to hold off until that is known, and then at such time an engineer can complete a wave uprush assessment, hence the reason for the request for a holding symbol to that front. The only question I have for clarity as it relates to the conditions imposed is the condition number 13 applicable to the severed parcels, making reference to the parkland dedication fee in accordance with bylaw 15-2013. My question to that for clarity is that completed as a flat fee in accordance with the township's bylaw, or is that an appraisal that is completed by one real estate professional and or multiple and then averaged? I just wanted to get that clarity so we can put together a budget, of course, in satisfying conditions for the owner. And that is all from my end. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, would the CEO be the most appropriate person to answer that question regarding the fee?
Vanessa, I can take care of it.
Okay, Dimitri.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So, Jason, the parkland dedication fee for waterfront parcels is based on a real estate assessment of appropriate value by either a qualified real estate agent that uses comparables in their assessment or a qualified appraiser. If there is a situation that comes up, and it sometimes does, where The value of the lots appears to be too low compared to the comparables in the area. One way that we kind of resolve that issue or that dispute is to have a third-party appraiser provide us with an opinion on the value of the lots. So when we establish the value, the way we calculate what the applicant pays is we take that value, we take 2/3 of that value, and then we apply 5% fee on that. So you take you take the value of the lot, multiply it by 0.66, that gives you 2/3 of the value. And then you multiply it by 0.05, which gives you 5% of that 2/3 value.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I appreciate that. Thank you, Dimitri. And just, of course, for clarity of course, it's all given or taken, sorry, on the day before the provisional approval. So it's not truly representative of the value of the lot as it sits as a separately conveyable lot, correct?
That's right. The bylaw states that it's the value of the property the day before provisional consent is given.
Through you, Madam Mayor, much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, now council's turn. Councillor Holton, have you got any questions or comments?
My only question, and I guess it's not pertaining exactly to this, but this is the first time I saw the wave uprush. Is that something new?
So, Mayor, it's not something new. It's just sometimes when we create waterfront parcels, that wave uprush issue doesn't come up because of the elevation of the properties. In this case, the property, it looks really, really flat when you get there. But when you look at the elevation profile, it's just, it gradually slopes into the water. In this case, it's a really low-lying property. And because it's a low-lying property, that wave uprush hazard is something that we identify.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Councillor Diplomacy.
Mayor, just look at the revision. Just curious, this is 76.1 there, you have the waterfront as the floodlines on Dura. Wave rush coverage is 76.9, so about 0.8 meter difference in height.
That's right.
So basically, the retaining wall across the front would suffice to meet this requirement.
It depends on what the engineering study says. I know a lot of the time when you look at, so there are guidelines that are used by a lot of municipalities on Lake Ontario for how to develop. And sometimes just adding like a retaining wall may not be enough because of the force of the water and stuff like that. So in some cases, yes, but it really depends on what the engineer has to say.
No, thank you, it's curiosity. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Councillor Saunders.
Hey, Member, thank you for educating us on something called uprush, which I've never heard before. The other, in fairness to the applicant, do we know what the cost of one of these uprush assessments would be?
I don't know, quite frankly. But I know when I was speaking with Jason, the applicant's agent, I think he has experience in doing these studies, and I don't think the costs are low. Quite frankly, I think they're a little bit more expensive to do than a standard engineering study that you would do for like irrigation or flood prevention.
So in fairness to the applicant, they're aware of what this might cost.
Yeah, we've discussed this with the applicant. Yeah, so they're aware. I mean, the alternative here is that planning staff cannot provide a recommendation.
Thank you.
Councillor Ackley.
Just one question. So has somebody walked the shoreline here to see if it's already had I'm looking for the word, that there's signs of washout already from previous years to justify them paying for this study?
We don't have qualified engineers to do that work. You have to understand that when you're looking at things like flood assessment, a lot of the information that we take our base or that we use to come up with our recommendations come from best practice documents. And like the Conservation Authority doesn't have an engineer on staff, we don't have an engineer on staff. That's why we need somebody to go out and do a study to determine this. If I were to go out and say, well, it doesn't look like there's been any washout, and then there is washout, that's not only professional liability on me because I'm not qualified to do that work. It's also professional liability on the township.
That's what we're looking at.
Okay, well, as some of the councillors have picked up on, I too am very concerned about the wave upwash assessment that has not been done. That particular area, and that is lake/river, the waves aren't small. That's at Fire Winter Dock. And the erosion is significant as it was. And when the purchaser got the property, a whole lot of trees were removed from around the shoreline. That was very naive in my view and very alarming because that was nature's shoulder to stop erosion. And we've lost acres from our island during our high water and high wind episodes. So I'm very concerned that without having a wave uprush assessment done ahead of time, and it should not, I don't want to see another scenario such as what we've seen with Easy Lane, where there's been a huge amount of expense to homeowners that didn't realize just how endangered their places were getting the wave action coming in. And we've certainly seen the wave action take over the winter dock in that area. So it's nothing to be underestimated. The access to the driveway rather than municipal road, and that's against what we have. You know, you're to have access straight to a municipal road, not just to a driveway and that. And that's part of our bylaws, I believe. Talking about flood control. How much does that land disappear when we do have our high water? And we've had 2 high waters in the past 7 years. So it's significant. And as you did identify at one point in your report, you know, we're above and beyond what you can really anticipate anymore. But another critical piece is the agriculture in that, and the destruction of the barn. That place has been a farm for well over 100 years and that, and once that barn is gone, it's quite clear that it won't be suitable for animals to be located as close to these houses. That's part of the thinking, I believe, right behind that. And yet that is directly contrary to what the province has, and that for trying to protect agricultural land and their themes of economic sustainability. This island is agriculture as a backbone, not just houses. So there's no obligation on our part that if somebody takes a gamble to buy a farm and decide to try to convert it into residences, there's no obligation on our part to facilitate that. But more than that, in the Township of Frontenac Island's official plan, consolidated in 2013, we make special mention that we want to protect future use of agriculture is being protected, not just the existing. So maybe the fellow that owned the farm has passed away and the cows are gone now, but once that barn's gone, and the intent is quite clear that that will never go back into a livestock agricultural use. I have a problem with that, and I think we should take a longer view than what this is. And I do appreciate, you know, people purchase properties and they have big dreams and that of what to do with that, but it really is up to this council to hold the line to make sure that we have a sustainable economy. And agriculture is very much a part of it. So I must say I'm not in favor of this moving forward, but that's my view of it. Take on the report.
Madam Mayor, can I provide just some feedback or some comments to your comments? Thank you. So I think planning staff does take the comments regarding agriculture seriously. Frankly, it's a discussion that we always have with people that, when new applications come up for residential uses. In this case, we're not saying that the retained parcel, it can't be used for agriculture or livestock facilities at all. We're just basically saying that the barn, where the barn is right now, is a little too close, but because the property, the retained parcel is so deep, there are other areas on the property that can support a livestock facility. It just may not be as close to those new residential parcels as the current barn is on that lot. I know, speaking with the property owner, that barn is also not in great condition. So if anybody is looking to house livestock in the future, the question is really going to be, are we going to retrofit the existing barn, or are we just going to demolish and build a new livestock facility elsewhere on the property? So with respect to the comments regarding the flooding, the reason why we decided to do a holding overlay here instead of requiring a wave uprush hazard study is because of where exactly that property is on the island. So Easy Lane, a lot of the development on Easy Lane is below that. Not only below the 1 to 100 year floodplain, but it's also below, of course, below the wave uprush limit. Easy Lane is also on the southern side of the island where the wave action and the bathtub effect that I was talking about is a lot more is a lot longer than in the narrower channel relatively narrower channel where this specific lot is. So in our discussions with the Conservation Authority, who are like the experts in when it comes to natural hazards, that's why we went with a holding symbol rather than asking for a full-on wave uprush hazard study. The other thing to remember, I think, is that the lots that are proposed to be created do have developable parcels on them outside of that wave uprush hazard limit. So it actually would be even beneficial for future property owners to develop outside of the wave uprush hazard limit. Why? Because it places them further away from the water. And what we want to do in our official plans and in general is to keep development further away from the water to protect the integrity of both our shorelines as well as fish habitat. So anyway, I just wanted to provide some clarity from a planning perspective on some of those issues.
Going back to the removal of the trees that occurred in that, not only am I concerned from an erosion perspective, but going back to our documents and that on the protection of the natural environmental heritage as well. So there was no application to the council or any place else to say, oh, by the way, we're going to take down 20 or 30 trees that used to be along that shoreline.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's an unregulated activity.
It is unfortunate with that, but the actual amount of erosion that may occur naturally there is of concern because that is critical for saving as much land as possible. I've actually had family of a deceased family member ask me when we moved the road because they remembered so much more land in front of their property before when their grandmother had it. I said, Mother Nature removed your land. And that's what erosion does. So I'm very concerned on its own for what's going on here, but anyways.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
the agent has a question or comment.
Okay, Jason?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate your comments, and I just wanted to follow up in addition to those in which Dimitri had responded to quickly. Firstly, as it relates to some of the tree removal on site, there was some grubbing and tree removal that occurred, of course. Much of the large vegetation along the shoreline was retained for the purpose exactly of what you're suggesting for protection of that soil and that riparian area adjacent to the water. Some of the tree removal was actually completed to support the surveyor's work in trying to understand where exactly the 76.1 versus 76.9 on wave uprush and 1 in 100 year floodplain is located as well. So it was completed. It's been done. It's understood to have been done for a reason and not necessitate a permit approval process. The only other comment I'd like to make as it relates to the agricultural protection piece. Again, very much appreciate the comment. The owner of the property today is a farmer and very well in tune with the agricultural community, both on the island and on the mainland. The property, as I understand it, is located in a rural designation shoreline area in the counties and townships official plans. So the province does, of course, as we all know, protect agricultural lands and look to support that in our rural communities in Eastern Ontario. And they primarily do that through prime agricultural designations. So this proposal, we've attempted to align with the policy direction at the county and the township level and as well at the provincial level to those points. Lastly, my comment as it relates to access on the private lane as opposed to a public road. Again, we've worked with the county through this approval process and understand that the county and township's official plan allow for frontage, minimum 45 meters of road frontage on public on non-public roads, so on private lanes, as being an appropriate form of development on Wolf Island, for example, and you see throughout the rest of your communities. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Councillor Ackley?
Can Dimitri just put that picture back up that shows the shoreline there for a sec, with all the trees and stuff? Just so we can have a better view of it.
Unfortunately, the second one doesn't show the trees, but.
Oh, like this picture?
Yeah.
Yeah, just this one be fine. Just so people can see it. Excellent. Yeah, so is that on all trees on the, where the red stripe is on the shoreline? It looks pretty heavy.
Used to be.
Oh, that's an old picture? There's no trees there now?
That was in 2024. I think that was prior to, removal of.
So how much would be missing there?
I'll let the property owner speak to that.
Jason, are you available for an answer as to how many trees have been removed?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, I haven't been on site in the last month, so I'm unaware or unable to comment. I don't have an exact number. It was a local tree removal company who was hired to complete that work, and they're not at today's meeting, unfortunately.
Any other questions from council?
No.
Okay, to the public then, if you have any questions or comments, then step forward to the podium, give your name, your address, and no hat, and you're fine. I'm just saying it for everyone.
Mike Bromley, Wolf Island. I think it's inevitable that waterfront lots are going to come about. I'm not against this development. I think this is the way things go. The only thing that I would ask is that, amongst other things, I'm licensed to design and install septic systems. And the wave rush, this is the first I've heard of it. And that red area, we're talking about setbacks of buildings, but part of getting a building permit is having a septic system. And I would say that based on what I'm seeing, is there any way of stipulating the class 4 treatment unit would be used like they do in the Ottawa Valley where it's low lying and they have similar things? Because a conventional septic with high water was rendered completely useless and actually destroyed the lot second from the left. It looks like I'd be hard pressed to put a septic bed and a building where that wave rush area is. So is that something that planning could stipulate or council could direct as part of this is that they have a class 4 system? I think Marcel would also support that.
I think that's something Marcel can, the township chief building official, can certainly look at through the permitting process. The wave uprush area, that red area that I showed, wouldn't permit a septic system unless it was cleared by a study to begin with. So when we were looking at one of the reasons why this holding symbol came into the discussion was specifically because of that lot that you saw on the left-hand side where there's kind of like a U-shaped pattern for the developed parcel. Because technically there is still some space to put a conventional septic system outside of that natural hazard. But it would result in a very, very small system in a very, very small house.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to, again, look at developing within that hazard, that engineering study would basically say, this is the type of technology you need to make sure that the building is not impacted by the uprush. And one of those recommendations may be specific treatments to the septic system, like either a specific type of septic system or mitigation measures such as the strapping of the tank to the bedrock so it doesn't float away due to pressure.
I'm just wondering, rather than Marcel being the bearer of guidance, is it not something that planning could stipulate that if the severance is granted, it's conditional on class 4 septic, so that any potential owner knows going in that that's what they're looking at is a much more expensive system than a conventional. Well, maybe 3 lots would be better than the 4.
I'm not sure if it's just a mixture of terminology, but a class 4 system is considered to be a conventional system. So you're talking about a
Class 4 is a treatment unit.
as far as I understand, class 4 is a septic tank and distribution.
It is, but class 4 has a treatment unit that's like bacteria in it, several different kinds, so the effluent that comes out of it is actually drinkable for livestock. You don't have the biome in the bed, which is what the problem is, a conventional septic. When you've got high water, it destroys the bed, and then that biomass is free to flow into the.
Yeah, so I think what I understand those systems to be called is advanced treatment systems.
It is.
Yeah, it's an advanced treatment system. So if we were to stipulate that an advanced treatment system is required, those comments need to come from Marcel, as well as, because he's the licensed installer of the township, and he's the one that basically will tell us what type of system is needed on that property. But an advanced treatment system comes with its own issues in terms of the property owner would have to enter into an annual agreement for inspection of the actual unit. Then the question comes up, who is enforcing that? Is the township going to be doing annual inspections? Yeah, so if Marcel's comments to us were to say, hey, we need an advanced treatment system here, planning would certainly be adding those into the approval process. But in this case, Marcel came back and basically said class 4 systems are supportable in this type of scenario. I'm not against advanced treatment systems. It's just, it would be difficult for me to say an advanced treatment system is most appropriate here when I'm not licensed and Marcel didn't give us those comments.
Under Part 8 of the building code, class 4 is the treatment unit, but you're calling class 4 a conventional septic.
Right, so I think it might be terminology. So a class 4 system is what as far as I understand, it has the effluent goes into a tank, and then that tank slowly distributes, or the liquid that comes out of it comes into a leach, goes out into a leach field.
Yeah, well, if you look at Part 8, you'll see that. Anyways, thank you.
Are there any more comments from the public? Okay. Councillor Jablonski, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was thinking that, but I just think this is more of a just comment section, less much a design a septic bed system meeting. So just like trying to stay on track if we can, that's all.
Okay, well, I do appreciate the comments from the public because it is relevant to what this application is about. And I think it's raised some very interesting questions. So when we get to the motion that I'll be asking for deferral.
Thank you. Moved by Deputy Mayor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Holton, that consent application number B-09-25-W, B-10-25-W, B-11-25-W, B-12-25-W, and B-13-25-W for the property located at 369 Road 7051, legally described as Part Lot 5 and Part Lot 6, Concession 9, Wolf Island, Township of Frontenac Islands, for the creation of 4 new waterfront lots and a new private lane right-of-way easement be approved, subject to the conditions noted in Appendix A of the planning report. And that the clerk shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed, and that all conditions outlined in the notice of decision shall be completed and the certificate of official issued within a period of 2 years after the notice of decision was issued, as required by the Planning Act.
Okay, now it's time for comments or questions on that. Councillor Holton?
No comments. I think we're fulfilling all our obligations.
Councillor Jablonski?
No comments.
Councillor Saunders?
No comments. I'm in favor of the application.
Okay, Councillor Ackley?
I'm in favor.
Okay, I'm gonna ask if there's anyone that would second a deferral, that this be deferred until there's considered for the uprush wave investment to be completed and septic systems to be identified clearly as part of the conditions. Is there any seconder for the deferral? Seeing none, then I'm gonna ask for a recorded vote.
Counselor Ackley? Are you in favor of the motion as that was put on the floor to approve the application?
Yes.
Counselor Holton?
In favor.
Counselor Jablonski?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Saunders?
In favor?
Mayor Greenwood Spears?
Opposed?
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And now a motion to adjourn.
Moved by Counselor Jablonski, second by Counselor Ackley, that the public meeting adjourned.
All those in favor? Carried. Adjourned at 10:45, sorry for the delay in the open of the next meeting, but we will open it right away.